I have been seeing this John F. Calhoun Jr. He says he is King Arthur's descendant. I don't know. Also says he's being Trump masked. Could you please help with this? Thank you. No, I can't really. I don't know about the Trump mask. I will say this. There's this group of people, and I don't know, everyone or who they're, that, they believe that it's called the Jesus strand. So I believe that Jesus is, the word brothers of Jesus, as I've explained in other videos. It's absolutely not true that Mary remained a virgin the rest of her life. The only reason the Catholic Church it says that is so that they can place Mary on a God status, on to become an idol, that then they can excuse away their idols everywhere of Mary, and make excuses for a ton of things that, anybody who follows me knows how I feel about the Catholic Church, and they are a big part of the misguidance and the wrong teachings. But the other problem here is that I do believe that Jesus absolutely had, it's in scripture, that he had brothers, James, Jude, Simon. These weren't just his regular, the people that followed him. These were his half biological brothers. And it would make sense that he would have them carry on the tradition. Not that anybody else couldn't, but that you would come to a place, because Jesus said how wicked this world is, that you would need at some point in the future to be able to line up the history with evidence, okay? So although in many ways the bloodline doesn't matter so much, because then you're dealing with the flesh, it does matter in the sense that if God wanted to be able to tie things up at some point in the future, so that the wicked ones, the people that have been deceiving everyone, whether, many of those people deceiving people because they believe the deception, then you would need to be able to tie it up with evidence, plus aligning with the history, the gospel, all that, okay? But there's people that in a group that want to say that Jesus went on to marry Mary Magdalene. Absolutely not true. No, not true. Because, and you could, if you really sit back and think about it, because I've prayed about this, if you sit back and think about that, that gives the perfect opportunity then to diminish Jesus. They'll say that, no, it doesn't. No, it does. Because then you've made it about the flesh. You've made it about the flesh. The other reason I don't believe that is because it's I'm for women's rights and stuff, but I'm certainly not some crazy feminist, okay? I've never supported the feminist movement, because look they're really just a bunch of men. I mean, that's who they support now, is men who claim to be women. So that just shows, that just has come full circle. But that said, I don't believe that Jesus saw women as less than at all. He didn't. Mary Magdalene was one of his disciples. She followed him. Everybody writes her off as a prostitute. She was plagued with demons. Looking at her story, it reminds me of being an alcoholic. Those demons. And he saved her from that, very much like God saved me. So, that was the only thing that saved me from addiction. So that's how I look at the Mary Magdalene story. So she followed him since then. The whole thing about them getting married and having children, Hollywood has wanted to put this out for a long time. So what it will go to is to try to diminish Jesus's life, which is what this world wants to do. And they'll raise up any other false god, but God, they don't. Jesus is the one that they always, don't like. So as far as the other thing to remember here, okay, and this upsets people, but I'm just going to say it, is that there's some people that worship John F. Kennedy. They do. They worship him to a point that I think it goes hand in hand in a way with that Democrat Party. because and I'm not saying John F. Kennedy. I don't know where I stand with JFK, because JFK is responsible for Obama's dad coming here. Maybe he didn't know it was going to turn out that way, but he is. JFK was not even president yet, and the Kennedy Foundation paid for airlift to America. I just don't understand why JFK was involved in that kind of stuff. Why he paid for the two. It's in their library, so this isn't conspiracy. I've said before, people, I don't see any TikToker ever talking about airlift to America. No patriot, nobody wants to talk about that, because then it calls into question what was the Kennedys doing. Why when because the State Department had refused to pay for these Kenya students to come here because they weren't citizens, but to come here to go to the biggest universities. And on the second flight, so since the State Department refused, these people involved in this went to Kennedy when he was in the Senate and said, will you pay for it? And he paid for it. The Kennedy Foundation paid for the first two flights. Then they continued on. Our State Department then, I guess, had no problem doing it. But the second flight was carrying Barack Obama's dad. So I have questions around the Kennedys in general. That said, it doesn't mean that JFK wasn't. I mean, clearly he was murdered. I think that was probably the first of many traumatic events that happened to the American people. And part of the reason I say I don't know where the Kennedys stood, and is because he was the first Catholic president. So, the first Catholic president, and people had issue with that. People were worried about it. Again, I've gone into why that was a concern to people. Because the Catholic Church, the Roman Empire, took over everywhere, and now look at what the Catholic Church is aligned with. They're aligned with globalists. So I think that when your country has been a country that was founded on the values of the gospel, on Jesus Christ, then maybe it went astray when JFK was elected. And there's questions whether he was really elected and not selected. But nobody on TikTok anyway will want to hear that, because there's this wanting to put JFK on a pedestal, and I don't put him on a pedestal. I'm not saying he was a bad person. But you look at his life. His father was involved with the mob. I mean, it kind of shows that, when you turn your country over to maybe mobsters, then you're going to continue to get mobsters. I'm not saying JFK was. Then there's the group that JFK Jr. is still alive. I don't sign on to that either. I just don't. I don't, but I didn't follow the Q letter thing. So that's the Q community that has, turned JFK Jr., that he's been alive all this time. No, that's going down the total. That's really in a conspiracy area to me. And then deliberately being done. Part of this Clooney Jr. is not only that, it goes to the gematria stuff. So I've seen videos. Yeah, I know about Miller Time. I've seen his videos, okay? I mean, I'm not going to say anything against him. I'm not. I mean, his videos are fun. He tries to keep it uplifting. Is he just a regular everyday patriot? I think so, and believes it, and there's a ton of people that follow the gematria. But I also think, especially in this day and age, that whole gematria, which is the letters assigned to numbers thing, is a way, and that's the way they say back, in medieval days, they coded to each other messages. And I'm not going to say that's not true. I haven't looked into that aspect of it. I just think it's very easy to manipulate that. So that's really all I can say about all of this. Do I think there's a bloodline here? Yes. And I think there's people that want to make you think that the bloodline goes to JFK and, like he's Camelot. I don't know. Maybe. I mean, the Kennedys are one of the 13 families, though. So, I think there is a bloodline here that's important that followed on through Jesus's brothers, half brothers. And I think there's a whole bunch of people that are on TikTok and BitChute that just want to lead a bunch of people astray, as Jesus said would happen.